Alright everyone, today Trump of course is making it quite plain to the UN, hey, North Korea is too much of a problem, we're hoping you're gonna help tackle this solution. By the way, I'm very pessimistic on whether he makes headway in the UN, I'll get into that. Called Kim Jong-un Rocket Man several times, not only tweeting it out, he's like, oh, I met with South Korea's Prime Minister, and you know, I wonder how Rocket Man over there in North Korea is doing. Now, I hear that there are long gas lines. Oh, how sad. Because of the oil freeze on North Korea as part of the sanctions. It's only partial, but it will sting them a little bit. And then threatens basically to destroy North Korea. Now Mattis comes out and says, oh, yeah, we have kinetic military capabilities that people don't know about. Don't worry, we can deal with North Korea in various ways. So it looks like all the cards have been played already. And it looks like it's probably going to be conflict. I'll tell you why. The odds that the UN, Trump complains about, well, you're bureaucratic and we need the leader of the UN to sort of dumb down the bureaucratic aspects so things can actually get done. The odds that that will actually happen are so fantastically low. I would be extremely surprised if anything is done by the UN. Just like in the past, they've done absolutely nothing about any prior conflict, any prior engagement, diplomatic quarrel between nations. The only answer of the UN is, hey, we're going to sanction some nation on some level. One other nation votes against it and it never happens. That's what happens at the UN. It is a costly and worthless dying edifice, a remnant of the atomic era that no longer works at all. If it ever worked really, that much to begin with. Now, I personally think that it is acceptable to destroy Kim Jong-un and his generals and attempt to silence the DMZ's artillery and go after North Korea. If it is possible for us to do that, with or without some secret military technology Mattis may or may not, but will not confirm he's alluding to, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and do it. And hit them hard. The hope is that if you do that, most of the peasants in North Korea aren't actually going to take up arms and be like, well, thank goodness this is over. Now we've got reunification. They'll be prosperous. They'll be free, to the greatest degree that you can be in today's world, which is also quite sad. But we can't deal with the fact that he's now threatening to unleash nuclear weapons on Japan. He's made it, Kim Jong-un has now made it fairly plain that that is his intent. Basically, oh, those Japanese are, they're setting up these anti-missile systems. We hate that he's firing missiles over Japan's territorial waters, into Japan's territorial waters. He's obviously trying to start a war or something like that. That's not the way. I consider him sane, but warmongering. When is it, by the way? I'll say this to people who say, well, Stick's the warmonger, or the U.S. imperialist warmongers. Is this not also warmongering? Japan's not even really directly involved in the struggle until Kim Jong-un decides to threaten them. They're sitting off to the side hoping that war doesn't break out. Until fairly recently, they had a pacifism doctrine as well. They scrapped it because they're terrified that North Korea is actually crazy enough to fire the first shot in a nuclear exchange. That's what they're doing. It's very difficult to get the Japanese, of all people, to give up the pacifism doctrine. Kim Jong-un managed to make it happen. China has largely backed off. They've condemned their last missile test. They condemned their last nuclear test, which might at some point collapse and leave a radioactive crater where they conducted that actual H-bomb test, and that's probably what it was. Or an oversized atomic weapon of some strange variant. They've obviously progressed in their abilities. They're firing off missiles with greater regularity, and things have begun to come to a head. Is there really a diplomatic solution if North Korea is not willing to actually back down? And they're not going to back down. That's why I think what people in the region should be afraid of. It doesn't make me afraid when Kim Jong-un says, well, we're going to turn the U.S. into a lake of fire. No, it makes me concerned when it looks like he's going to attack South Korea or Japan. Our allies within the region, if they get attacked, we have no choice but to defend them. A lot of people seem to think that we're being warmongering and imperialistic by attempting to defend other nations that are fundamentally incapable of defending themselves against such a foe. Japan and South Korea do not have nuclear weapons. They don't even have, they're now 2 steps behind North Korea, believe it or not, in that category. They don't have hydrogen bombs. They don't even have a Trinity device. They don't even have a test weapon. Do we really want to sit by also? If we look too ineffective, if it looks like we're just going to rely upon the UN that'll never do bullshit about the situation, if it looks like we won't defend our allies and say, well, fuck the UN, they're not doing anything, North Korea at some point will attack these people, we're going to preempt them and not give them the chance to do that. We're going to save, you know, some tens of millions of people in South Korea and Japan, probably a bunch of North Koreans too who would otherwise be turned into nothing more than cannon fodder for a Zerg rush on the DMZ. Is that really warmongering to suggest that we're going to defend the lives of tens of millions of people? Look, we invade Iraq. On false pretenses, by the way. Saddam never came out and said, yeah, I've got nukes now, ha ha ha, and then Bush said, oh, we got to invade because them WMDs. That's not what happened. He had some old stockpiles of chemical and bioweapons that he never really talked about. When he made threats, they were hollow threats. Kim Jong-un hasn't been making hollow threats. He's making credible threats against 2 of his neighbors. Kinda 3, because, you know, he threatens China every now and then now as well. Seems to be working more with Russia than China now. They're the ones smuggling goods in to bypass the embargo. They set up a ferry service, which is hilarious. It's like, oh yeah, the business, we're going to go up and visit glorious Russia. And then we'll go down and visit glorious, we're going to go have a holiday in Pyongyang. It's going to be great. I hear they've got a carousel now. I hear they've got electric lighting in some of the buildings. It's like that skyscraper of death that they've got that's still unfinished. It is imposing. It is architecturally, it actually looks pretty good, but they haven't actually finished it for some unknown reason. It's like everything in North Korea is theatrical. You don't really exactly know what's serious and what's not. But they have the H-bomb. They now have semi-modern nuclear weapons. Something far more sophisticated than the atomic weapons they had before. And they may have more of them. At what point are we going to get serious here? The UN, it takes them 10 years just to pass one little resolution that doesn't even have any fangs to it. When Trump comes out and says, well, I hope that the UN will grow some balls, basically. They're not going to grow any balls. They never had any. They're incapable of it. You get a bunch of nations together with totally disparate economic and social and diplomatic and military situations, gathered under a half a dozen different sort of overarching banners in an ever-rotating, changing system of alliances. They're not going to agree on anything. Not to the degree you need them to do so to actually take action on North Korea. You think that the UN is going to say, okay, well, the world agrees North Korea is a threat, so we're all going to get involved at the same time. We're going to bring the whole world's military apparatus to bear on Pyongyang to knock Kim Jong-un, his generals, and his military out to try to save as many lives as possible. You think that's actually going to happen? You're in dreamland. You're living in a fantasy if you think the UN's capable of such a thing. The UN took them years. When people were being purged in Darfur or in Rwanda, it took them so long to get involved. And they never brought lethal capabilities with them. They would just sit there ineffectively like a bunch of sitting ducks, a bunch of little weaklings. The UN's own troops are a total joke. That's why when people here worry about, oh, the blue hats are going to show up to confiscate our guns. Yeah, a couple dozen farmers could defeat all of the UN's forces. Tanks and all. It'd be that easy. These people don't know how to fight. These people are cowards. They show up, then you know you've already won. Oh, we're opposing the UN? We can declare victory. Open the champagne. It's going to be great. They're not going to do anything. They're probably not even authorized to shoot at us if we're shooting at them. They're certainly not authorized to actually hit us. They'll fire a few warning shots. Ooh, we're so scared. They'll build some roadblocks and put people in a refugee camp and then surround it and hope that you won't roll over their corpses with tanks because they can't actually fight back. That's what the UN does when it gets involved. Fuck the UN. Meanwhile, if the US gets involved in North Korea, we stand a damn good chance of being able to bring down their nuclear apparatus without it being deployed offensively. And we don't need to use nuclear weapons to do so. And we don't need US troops on the ground to get the job accomplished. And we don't need to sit there for years and years at a time expending blood and money, nation building. It won't be necessary. South Korea has a mandate to reunify already. It's already recognized by most of the world. The Chinese are the only ones that have held out. They're backing off. They no longer care who reunifies. They only care who fires the first shot. Do we really want to sit there and wait, or do we think China's actually going to get involved on their behalf? If we say, well, with all of the provocations that they're doing now, and they've already committed acts of war, we're going to go in. We're going to flatten their artillery. We're going to bomb their nuclear sites. We're going to kill Kim Jong-un and his generals. We're not even going to bother taking them alive. South Korean troops will march in. The Japanese naval and air presence will be involved. So will the U.S. Anyone else want in, you can get in. You've got X amount of time to get on board with this capability. And the more people that are involved, the quicker and easier it will be to decapitate their ability to launch any hydrogen bombs outside of their own territory. We've got to get in as quickly as lightning and destroy their military apparatus before they have a chance to fire anything in defense. If we can do that, it's justified, because it'll save so many North Koreans. But now imagine an alternate scenario. Let's say we continue doing what we're doing now, which is basically nothing other than talk. Let's say they do get those long-range missiles that they so desperately seem to want. They get full miniaturization. Now they've got maybe 100, 50-kiloton weapons loaded onto missiles, and they start firing them because their entire goal is to be able to reunify Korea under their banner. That's their whole goal. And they tell the U.S., stand down. You get your people out of Korea because otherwise they're going to die. We are marching into South Korea. So many North Koreans will die. Then you'll call it imperialistic. When we defend ourselves, these same people that are saying, oh, it's so evil to get rid of Kim Jong-un. He threatens everyone around him, but it's evil to do anything about it for some reason. Then they'll be 10 times more mad when they realize what the death toll is. Oh, yeah, it's just half the population of South Korea, about 90% of the North Koreans, a few million people in Japan, maybe some millions of Chinese. Will Kim Jong-un spare Beijing? Who knows? Maybe he launches a hydrogen bomb there, too. That would be a pretty bad situation, wouldn't it? It'd be the only non-limited use of nuclear weapons in an offensive capability that we've ever seen. There have been 2 atomic weapons in human history were dropped offensively. They were rather small devices, very early primitive atomic weapons. If they're deployed at this point, we're talking about things that are, 5, 10 times larger. That's what Kim Jong-un now apparently is privy to. Do we really want a couple dozen of them blowing up on the same day so we can test the the nuclear winter theory? Or some insane shit like that? I don't think so. I think that his threats should be taken as dangerous. No action yet, other than, we violated the sovereignty of Japan and South Korea multiple times, and we're issuing credible threats to destroy these countries. I would think that that's credible enough to take seriously. Why don't we assume that he's rational and not insane, take it seriously, and act accordingly? When he threatens, oh yeah, we're going to nuke Tokyo, we're going to nuke Seoul, or something like that. Why not? Why aren't the Chinese taking it seriously? They stand to lose a lot if a war breaks out on the peninsula and nuclear weapons are deployed. Especially since the U.S. would gain a cause to deploy its own hydrogen bombs onto Pyongyang if they are actually launched from North Korea. I would oppose that use. I don't think we should even have a contingency in place where we deploy nuclear weapons. I don't, because even though North Korea is a nuclear state, you lose the moral high ground once you've deployed them offensively. Then it becomes a lingering issue forever and ever, and a blot on the country. It'd be better to just deploy a shit ton of conventional weapons. Of course, it's not just the nuclear weapons you have to be concerned about. You realize that Kim Jong-un has an active bioweapon program, and chemical weapons. I'd probably be more worried about a missile hitting the U.S. mainland that contained some sort of virus than I would be a nuclear weapon. Nuclear weapon can't reach me where I'm sitting. I'm just fine, and why would Rutland be a target? If he hits San Francisco, okay, he killed a bunch of Antifa members, maybe. But biological warfare is way worse. Biowarfare is so much worse than nuclear warfare. Getting vaporized by a nuke is relatively nice compared to, getting the bubonic plague or some other nasty ailment. Oh, yeah, I got anthrax. At least it wasn't a nuke. No, I don't think that you'd respond that way. Trying to contain it would be a hellish ordeal, especially since we'd already be in open combat overseas. Other nations would get hit. It could cause a worldwide epidemic. It could wipe out billions of people from a few missiles. if it breaks containment. Enough order breaks down. Let's say Japan gets hit. Let's say Tokyo gets H-bombed. Order breaks down in Japan. And then a bunch of bioweapons have also been fired. North Korea falls, but now Japan is in uproar. Everyone's dying and getting sick. And people who are evacuating, they're sick too. Now it's in Korea. Now it hits China. Then it hits India. Some of those populations, you're not going to be able to contain that. In the most densely populated swath of the world. It'll spread everywhere. It'll hit Europe. It'll hit the US. So many people would die, it'd be like doomsday. You know, where you lose half the world's fucking population. Way worse than a limited nuclear exchange. I would rather him fire... I'd rather Rutland get hit by a nuke than get hit by a bioweapon. Be more survivable. More people die in the initial blast, a lot less people die thereafter, and there are a lot less cases of little kids being totally crippled because they have some terrible ailment. Oh, polio came back, yeah, because of Kim Jong-un. Wonderful. Yeah, we didn't secure those vials properly. You know, the last time that one lab accidentally shipped one of these things unprotected, oh, it went missing. I wonder where it went. Yeah, went to Iran, North Korea, maybe to China, someplace like that. Saudis took it, paid somebody very well. That's what we have to be concerned about. I would be more worried about decapitating any biological weapons around there than the nuclear weapons, honestly. It's going to be difficult. But at what point are we going to fucking get serious? You know, Trump calling Kim Jong-un Rocket Man is all well and good. Okay, you've made a joke. It's funny. You've threatened to destroy North Korea completely, which might end up happening if the UN doesn't get involved. He's not threatening so much as he's warning. Do people realize that either? If the US is forced to get involved, yeah, it could bring the utter annihilation of every man, woman, and child in North Korea. I would never support it. I think something much more limited and targeted can work. But if push comes to shove, if that artillery fires across the DMZ and starts liquidating hundreds of thousands of South Koreans, what the fuck do you think we're going to do? We're going to deploy a nuke. But very quickly, there won't be much alive near the DMZ on the North Korean side. There won't be anybody in Pyongyang. It'll be gone. They won't even get a warning. We have weapons that measure in the 3-4 megaton range. One of those weapons will destroy all of Pyongyang. There wouldn't be anybody left alive. The initial blast would kill all of them. It'd crush their bodies from the overpressure alone. It would vaporize and destroy everything. Even the hardened structures would probably be gone. There'd be some bunkers below ground. They'd have so much debris on them, they would be trapped alive. They'd be dying and suffocating down there. How lovely. We can avoid that, though, if we act quickly enough. We're rapidly approaching the point at which that's no longer possible. Once they get those missiles, or a sub-base deterrent, or a large enough array of hydrogen bombs, we have to attack, number one. People will call for it. The South Koreans and Japanese will attack at the same time at the very least. And we won't even have time to slap together a plan that's comprehensive enough to defend all of these people. Some of them will die. Some millions of people will be nuked, if that happens. That's about all. Peace out.